Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, went on CNN to talk about why Biden went down to the border this week. And more interestingly, she was also asked about the letter the White House sent to Fox News. Let's start with that first.
So look, the letters from my colleague speaks for itself, and you're right, that letter was sent. What I will say this more broadly, we're asking to make sure that when reporting about issues that are critical, that American people are hearing about, it needs to be factual and it needs to be accurate. And again, the letter speaks for itself that my colleague sent out.
So the White House doesn't think Fox News is accurately reporting on Joe Biden. Funny you should bring that up, because last weekend, Cheryl Atkinson put out an episode of Full Measure that talked about the accuracy of the media, comparing the way they covered Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. Here's a clip from that episode that I've sped up for the sake of time.
CNN claimed Nancy Sinatra was not happy her father's song was played at Trump's inauguration. But Nancy Sinatra responded, "That's not true. I never said that. Why do you lie, CNN?" Time falsely claimed Trump removed the bust statue of Martin Luther King from the Oval Office. TMZ reported Trump changed Black History Month to African American History Month, but Presidents Obama, Bush, and Clinton had all called it African American History Month. BBC, The Guardian, and others reported that Trump wasn't bothering to listen to a speech by Italy's prime minister since he wasn't wearing translation headphones. Turns out he was wearing a translation earpiece. Newsweek and others reported Poland's first lady refused to shake Trump's hand, but later had to admit she did. CNN edited Trump's remarks to make it seem as though he didn't realize Japan builds cars in the U.S., but the full statement made clear that he does.
You've been creating jobs for our country for a long, long time.
CNN also edited a video to make it seem like Trump impatiently dumped fish food in the water at Japan's palace. But he'd followed the lead of Japan's prime minister. Newsweek claimed Ivanka Trump plagiarized one of her own speeches, which is impossible since plagiarizing is stealing someone else's work. The UK Telegraph apologized for at least 8 mistakes in an article criticizing Melania Trump. The New York Times, AP, CNN, and others excerpted a Trump comment as if he'd called all illegal immigrants animals.
These aren't people. These are animals.
Later corrections noted he'd been referring to members of the murderous MS-13 criminal gang. The New York Times Magazine and CNN shared a story showing children illegally brought into the U.S. supposedly in cages, but the article and photos were actually from the Obama administration. Agence France Presse mistakenly reported that more than 100,000 children brought in by illegal immigrants were being held in detention. That was actually the total number in 2015 under Obama. Time and others showed a crying Honduran child to illustrate Trump separating illegal immigrant parents from children, but the child hadn't been separated from her parents in the U.S. MSNBC falsely claimed Trump banned the Red Cross from visiting the immigrant children. The Red Cross said that wasn't true. MSNBC also falsely claimed that Trump had talked about exterminating Latinos, but later corrected that and apologized. Several news outlets featured an empty podium at Trump's 4th of July celebration in 2019 and said he didn't draw crowds, but the photo was taken before the event. The actual crowd was huge. The New York Times and others implied Trump hadn't paid income taxes for 18 years, but the record shows he'd paid a higher rate than Democrats Bernie Sanders and President Obama. Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal reported special counsel Robert Mueller had subpoenaed Trump's bank records. That wasn't true. Politico falsely reported that Trump owed the Bank of China tens of millions of dollars in a loan coming due as he dealt with China on coronavirus. Not true. MSNBC falsely reported that Trump had loans with Russian co-signers. Slate.com falsely claimed a Russian bank server had been illicitly communicating with Trump Tower. And the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, and many others falsely reported that the Hunter Biden laptop scandal story was unsubstantiated or Russian disinformation. The New York Times reported that Trump seized on hydroxychloroquine as a miracle cure. Trump never said that.
And it may work and it may not work. But if it doesn't work, it's nothing lost by doing it, nothing.
The left-wing media isn't very accurate when reporting on Donald Trump. I put the link to this episode of Full Measure in the description and encourage you to check it out for yourself. I had to cut out plenty of examples. And she also has examples of how the mistakes the media are making during the current administration seem to also go negatively against Trump. Now let's see what this administration has to say about the border crisis.
This is not about politics for the president. Let's not forget, on the first day of his administration, 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago, he put forth a comprehensive immigration policy.
You know what else happened on the first day of his presidency? He started reversing the policies that Donald Trump put into place. Policies that made our border much more secure. And if it's not about politics, why did the Biden administration claim that the border was secure for nearly 3 years of his presidency and only now, in an election year, blame Republicans and Donald Trump for the crisis?
We took 4 months to come up with the bipartisan deal that came out of the Senate. 4 months. And it was not about politics. It was about an issue. When you think about the border, you think about the immigration, it's been broken for decades.
You say it's been broken for decades, but somehow the Trump administration didn't have the same problems that this administration is having. And as far as the deal that came out of the Senate goes, it doesn't do anything to actually secure the border. And that's the problem at the border. It's not secure. The CNN host then asked KJP about illegal alien crime and about the murder of Laken Riley.
So first of all, I want to offer our condolences to the family of Laken. I mean, this is a horrific loss for any family. And obviously, if whoever is found guilty, we need to make sure that that happens. And obviously, we don't want to see anything happen like that again. But here's the thing: we have done the work to make sure we're dealing with a broken immigration system. The Republicans have gotten in the way. They have gotten in the way. And that's what we continue to see over and over and over again.
So the guy who's been charged with the murder of Laken Riley was detained at the border and then let into the country under this administration's policies. Then he was arrested in New York for child endangerment, then given a ticket in Georgia for shoplifting. First off, why was he let into the country? But also, why wasn't he deported when he committed those other crimes? The answer is simple: because of Democrat policies. You can try to blame the Republicans all you want, but he wouldn't have gotten into the country if Trump was the president. And Republicans aren't the people creating sanctuary cities. The funniest part of this whole interview is that Karine kept repeating the claim that anything Joe Biden does is not about politics. Does she really think the American people will believe that a president who single-handedly caused the disaster at the border, who for years denied that there was a problem at the border, to now blame the previous administration for the problem, is not doing it for political reasons during an election year? It seems to me that the Biden administration made the problem at the border as bad as they could so that they could get an immigration reform bill passed, a bill that would have very little in it that conservatives would like, but they would feel pressured to pass it because of the crisis. It's like what Obama's chief of staff said back in the day.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before.
You see, there wasn't a crisis at the border when Joe came into office. And to get something done like an immigration reform bill that doesn't actually stop the flow of illegal aliens into the country, you would need a crisis of epic proportion. Look, Biden owns the crisis at the border. It's the Biden border crisis. This administration can claim it's Trump's fault all they want, and no one's going to believe it. And those who pretend to believe it are just playing politics, just like Biden is. There's one thing I know for sure, and it's this: if a Democrat politician tells you it's not about politics, you can be sure it's about politics. And that's the simple truth. Hey guys, thanks for watching. And if you all want to support this channel, check out the links in the description, and let's keep putting some common sense back into the great debate.